InfoSecSteph.
Yes.
Welcome to the SAINTCON hallway.
Hi.
Your first time at SAINTCON?
Yes. And hopefully not my last. This was honestly my expectations, not to say that they were on the ground, but you never know. Like, I've gone
Utah Con, Provo, what am I walking into?
I wasn't sure, but I had heard of SAINTCON for years, and it was always on my list of like one of the cons to attend. But you never know because I've been to DEF CON, of course, that's like the bar, the standard. So every other smaller con, I always compare like how close is it? And I will say of like all the smaller than DEF CON conferences, this is pretty close, especially this downstairs area with all the challenges and the interactive piece of it. I'm like very through the moon impressed because I was like, wow, it gives people who like rather do the talks or watch the talks later because they are recorded, like they get to like do the tactile part of it in person. It's a lot harder to do that stuff via video, to like have somebody, you can have somebody talking and whatnot, and maybe you're doing it at home, but it's a lot less fun when you can like look to your left and like say, oh, what are you doing? Or, oh, I didn't know about that technique. Or, oh, how do you solder? Or like, well, what about this? Or what if it gets too hot? I think having that in conferences is a lot more valuable than conference throwers know. So we have HuSecCon as well. It's a lot newer, but they don't have this level of like interactiveness that I've seen here. And I'm like, wow, this is honestly, I'm very impressed. I feel like y'all have done beyond what I've seen before. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's great to hear. What were you expecting? Some guys DMing me on Twitter, come to Utah.
I mean, I figured if you were inviting me that I wasn't expecting it to be like really horrible. But you know, I thought it was just going to be the talks, and I didn't expect so many villages or portions or areas to duck off to.
Right.
So I think that the extent of it, I thought it was smaller than what it is. It's actually big.
And you had a talk and it went really well. There was a lot of people in there.
Yeah, I was honestly afraid.
Were you? Because everything that I've seen, I even went back and looked at some footage. You were not.
Really? And
Did you just transition to stage mode or what?
No, everybody says I don't come across nervous, but inside I'm shaking. And maybe it's because the podium is blocking my legs, but I swear my knees were shaking. My knees always give me away. They're trembling. But I think halfway through, I get a stride and I'm like, well, I'm in the middle of it now. So
You're not nervous now, are you?
Yeah. No.
Because there's no shake? Okay, because
No.
I was like, there's no way to tell.
No, I prefer like stuff where I'm asked questions and I can answer because I feel like I'm more comfortable with that. It's the prepared talks. I'm neurospicy, so sometimes like I forget.
Neurospicy. That's a new term I haven't heard.
Yeah.
I like it.
I got it from TikTok, so don't like I didn't coin it, but I prefer it to neurodiverse. So because of that, like the prepared talks, I'm always like, oh gosh, like will I remember the anecdotes or are the notes clear enough? I feel like when I'm preparing it, I think, oh, I'm gonna know what that is, and then I'm in it and I'm like, what does that mean? And I just have to keep going. So.
Do you do a lot of speaker notes? Or do you just put up a picture and go?
I've done it all. Like I've done the speaker notes that are like very extensive, and I recognize I'm not reading all of that while I'm talking. So, and then I've done like the little blurbs. I think it really depends on what I'm talking about. Like if it's mostly experience, which was this talk was mostly on my experience, then I could just put like a little note here, a little note there. It's fine. But if it's like something where I'm explaining a concept, I need like a lot of notes, but I try to shorthand it. I don't know. I need to ask some of my friends that do this a lot more often, like what are their tips, because I'm horrible. I even Gab Smash, which she did a talk as well. I was like, so how did you do your notes? She's like, without notes, this presentation isn't happening the way that I wanted. And I'm like, sometimes too many notes distracts me while I'm doing it. So
I think you just have to find your own way.
Yeah, pretty much.
I would not recommend what I do to anybody.
What do you do?
I just put up a picture. I have no notes.
So, and that's helpful?
Yeah.
So you just look at it, you're like...
Now, to be fair, the more experience you do and the longer you do, there's an entire story for that picture.
Okay.
That I've lived. So exactly what you went through, you say, I'm just talking about my life and what I did.
Yeah.
Well, the more experience, the more things you do, that is your life.
True.
So if I put up a picture of a data center, I got an entire story to talk about the one time a supercomputer, I found it through a threat hunt, talking to another supercomputer, right? Like you can go off an entire story for just a picture.
True. I guess I always think about that, like with friends. If you're in a group chat, and you have memories together, and then you just put a picture that everybody's like, "I remember that moment."
Right.
So that's the same thing. Maybe I just need to be more comfortable with that, but I definitely need more context in a picture at this moment. I need like a little.
There is
more.
pros and cons. No talk's the same.
Yeah, true.
Because I'm
because you have different memories for each one.
But you're gonna find your own way in that, and
Yeah.
whatever makes you comfortable. The more you do it, the more what you like and what you do.
Yeah, and I'm realizing that like this is definitely not my first talk. I've done a bunch at this point, but this is definitely like one of the talks that I feel qualified to make, which is like debunking stuff and saying, okay, well, they sell you this dream when you're studying to get into security, and all the people you talk are going to kind of say this, but then when you get in the thick of it, it's completely different.
Right.
So I think that I could speak to at length because you go through stuff as you're working. So this was a lot better, but I was just kind of like, I just hope people find this either relatable or helpful. So to see like people after saying, oh, I'm kind of new in the industry, and like, this was really relatable because I've been struggling with imposter syndrome, or I thought that it would be this way and it's actually this way. So you saying that was like, okay, it's not just me experiencing it. So I'm like, my goal was accomplished. Even if it was one person that said that. I
Yeah,
feel like
I heard it from other people, so I guess you got a check mark there. Yeah. So after you rise the ranks, you're the CISO, and we're all working for you, and you're out here leading the charge and making it happen, and your storied career, and it's over, and you retire. What are you gonna do?
Oh, I'm actually.
What do you want to do that's not computers or beep boop beep?
So this is gonna sound so crazy. And maybe it's because my dad made the same transition, but I think I want to be a therapist.
Therapist. Okay,
Yeah.
no, yeah, it's your turn to interview. I'm gonna lay down. Nobody has me on camera,
How
but
do you
okay.
feel about that?
I feel like you could be a great therapist.
And I've heard that too. I think it's just not very lucrative.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's not as, I would say you need to be very stable to be a therapist, obviously, because if you have clients, they become dependent on you. You have to meet weekly and things like that. Right now, I'm too all over the place. I'm chasing my curiosity a lot more, which is why I do the speaking, or I go to the conferences, or I volunteer for stuff. So I think when I'm at the later end of my life, I'll be a lot more stable, a lot less willing to be all over the place, where I could be constantly
Available.
Yeah.
So there's been a few recent talks, and there hasn't been a lot of information on this, but it's starting to grow, and that is mental health and information security.
Yeah.
So you could be info
I know.
therapist, Steph.
Maybe. And maybe my client base would be either previous or current.
We all need it.
Yeah. I don't think there's a single person I've met that isn't either in therapy or wanting to be, or doing some sort of thing for the mental health, because it can be very stressful, and we have very high stress jobs that can kick off some sort of, and then people have PTSD from it, burnout. Somebody asked me a question, actually, they're like, what do you do when you're burnt out? And I'm like, that's so tough, because my advice will always be quit. It's like your environment is not going to help you while you're trying to get through the burnout. And even quitting, that's the start of your recovery. You still have to, there was one job I was really burnt out at, and even months after I'd left that job, I was still trying to get back to peak Steph. So yeah, I feel like I would have a large clientele.
I would agree with that.
Especially if you've been doing it for years. I think at that point you definitely have you need to be talked down for some stuff. And even if you're getting out of InfoSec, having to reprogram yourself into regular civilian life, I feel like that's a process people don't really think about or talk about too much, what it's like to calm down from a very fast pace or a very high stress environment or job. So yeah, I think it's something I could do from anywhere, and I feel like I'd be good at it. I'm really good at listening anyway. I'm an introvert, so we're all, most introverts are pretty good at listening. So I just feel like at that point in life, it'd be better. But right now, my patience and everything is not where it needs to be. It's not quite there. I might be like, why don't you just do this? And therapists are not supposed to do that. So yeah, got some growing up to do.
You're mentioning all over the place.
Yeah.
Doing lots of things right now. What are those things? What are the hobbies? What makes you excited to go?
So I think right now the most exciting, WeSys, which is Women in Cybersecurity, it has different affiliates, and they have a neurodiversity affiliate. So I'm the vice president. I just became the vice president this year. So we're ramping up a lot of like programs and support for people that are neurodiverse in the industry, specifically
Neurospicy.
neurospicy. See, there you
I'm
go.
learning stuff.
Yeah. So in the industry that don't have the resources or don't know how to talk to jobs about accommodations, like a lot of people that are neurospicy are super brilliant, but they just need very specific working environments to thrive, and people don't know that they can ask for stuff. Like for instance, there's one job I worked, like the knock sock floor, always dark, and I never really made the connection that that's a neurospicy thing, or it's one of the symptoms of neurospiciness, is that lights can be kind of overwhelming or overstimulating. So a lot of us like to work in the dark. So that stereotype of us in a basement with
Right.
dark, it actually manifests a lot in our field where people are like, don't turn the lights on. It's so much better like when it's dark and you have just the lights from the screens. So different things like that, being able to ask for accommodations just to make your job easier. I think it's been great to come up with those ideas and share those ideas because I didn't have help. I'm a late diagnosis. I didn't know I was neurospicy until like 3 years ago. So, I didn't know. There's a lot of stuff that you end up having to like just do or deal with, but then you hear other neurospicy people talk and you're like, you can ask for that? I didn't even know that that's a thing that you could do, or that's an accommodation? Wow. So it's been great to kind of learn for myself, but also help others try to figure it out. So that's one good thing. Of course, conferences is fun. It's fun to do as well, attending and speaking at and volunteering at them. And then I do LinkedIn learning courses. So
Oh, yeah?
yeah, I have two. I have one on social engineering and one on phishing. So the phishing one came out this year, and I just love seeing like people say, "Oh my God, I finished this course. It was so relatable." Because my thing is, I used to say I take security concepts and I turn it into Stephanie's. because,
I like it.
because I'll be like, the wording and everything is sometimes can be very like, I know we're writing documentation, so you want it to be professional, but come on, nobody talks like this in real life.
Relatable.
Yeah. So now it's more like, making it relatable, making it accessible to people that, they want to know what phishing is, or they want to know the intricacies of social engineering, but you're talking up here and they need to like, hey, shoot it to me straight. Well, how do you say this in layman's terms? So that's, I feel like, my specialty. So
No, those are great. And those are things that if somebody wanted to get to know you or come talk to you at a conference, but they're scared because you're so amazing and all these followers and they're an introvert, they can come up and bring up one of those things.
True. Yeah. I mean, honestly, if you were just to say, hey, you, I would probably be like, hi.
But if they walk up and say, listen, I'm looking for a new info therapist and I need somebody to speak Stephanese to me, would be better?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I'm like, do you know me? Like, who do you work for? How did you know I'm the right person for those things?
You have your path laid out, which I find is super impressive.
Oh, thank
Most
you.
people I'm trying to figure out and ask them, like, what do you want to be? And nobody knows. And the reality is you don't ever really know until you get there.
Yeah.
And then you decide if that's really what you want to be or not.
Yeah.
But you never know until you try to get there.
That's my problem too. Like I knew I needed to get into security. I knew I wanted to be a CISO, and then I know.
Hang on, real fast.
Oh, yeah.
What was the thing I know I needed to get into security? How did you get to that?
Okay, so I
got you laying down on the couch now.
Yeah. I was switching majors from print journalism because I was like, I'm going to be broke doing this, and I don't love writing in this manner enough to sustain me. So I was like, I need to switch, and my mom was like, you love computers, you love technology, why not do that? And I was like, I'm dumb, I can't do this. So she was like, I believe in you, just try it. If you don't
She's
like
like, don't
it,
you know you can just make LinkedIn learning modules and
Oh no, we were miles away
I know.
at that point. But so I went to the office to like declare my major to computer science, and they were like, well, what's your concentration? And I was like, what are the options?
computers?
Yeah, I was like, what is that? I didn't even know. And she was like, oh, software engineering, or you could just do straight computer science, or you could do information assurance. And I was like, What? So the first class I took ever.
So the first time you ever heard that this was a career option was with somebody telling you what you're enrolling for.
Literally.
That's wild.
Yeah.
We got work to do.
I know. And granted, this was years ago, so maybe it's better now, but I don't know. I'm pretty sure you probably
I mean,
would
even
find
that name, information assurance, it doesn't even,
it's
what does
even
that
outdated.
mean?
I know.
Yeah.
It's even outdated. And it was digital forensics / information assurance, which honestly, today's version would be cybersecurity.
Right.
That's what it would fall under. But at the time,
Right.
it was a criminal justice leaning school. So they just came up with the name that kind of fits what they do. And so when I learned that and I looked up what the curriculum was saying, and then I talked to a couple of professors, I was like, man, my neurospiciness loves this because my curiosity will never be satisfied. I will always have something I'm curious about, a challenge, something to overcome. And everything else felt like, I could probably plateau, or I could probably peak and be like, I'm bored. I don't want to do anything else in this industry. But this felt like it was going to keep up with me and how bored I get. So, and it hasn't disappointed. I've definitely, every year, it's like a challenge of trying to keep up. So I've defined the end, but the middle has been kind of tricky because you can really do a lot of different domains while you're just a practitioner and just an IC and not a manager. So now I've been trying to define, okay, I've done the operations, I've done the corporate security, I've done even some engineering. Now I want to specialize. Where is my curiosity taking me? And I'm honestly like a swivel head.
What is it?
Yeah, I don't know yet. I've been really trying to expose myself to as many things as possible to decide okay, for the next 5 years, where do I want to hang my hat and really dive in? DevSecOps is very appealing. Yeah, it's very appealing to me. So I'm like, maybe I just put my hat there, and it's gonna take 5 years, I think.
Time for some Terraform and Salt and Packer. And
yeah, I mean, the engineers that do that in my current job, every time we have a project that kind of overlaps, I'm always like, and what's that? And what's that? Oh. I'm constantly asking questions. So I think that's probably the next step before I decide, okay, I'm done. I wanted to be a manager now. But I'm of the opinion that some of the best managers I've had have had a practitioner career just because they understand the work, they understand what goes into it and how to support in that way, but then also they have that people management element. So
right.
Hopefully I become a good manager that way. But every manager I've met that I say, I still need time, they're like, you're always going to say you still need time before you become a manager. So pick that mark of when you're done and just commit to it, because there's never going to be a feeling of, now I feel ready to be a manager.
And I don't think it needs to be as clean as a delineation as you're probably saying either. You can be a manager and then go back and be an IC and be a manager. As long as you don't lose your chops to some extent.
Right.
Now, that might not be your exact progression to your CISO, but I have been in multiple of those back and forth, and it just decides, what do you want at this time in your life? And right? Meaning once you become a manager, you're not dead. You don't forget everything you did as a SOC, everything you did as an analyst, everything you did as a Terraform wizard master.
Yeah.
It's not that's gone. I guess I'm a manager.
Yeah. I guess that's what people, when I've seen the transition, because even one of my coworkers, he was my coworker 2 years and now he's a manager. Though I guess it's because a lot of people that do become manager do turn that off, where they're like, oh, I'm done with that life, that I just assume you can't go back and forth. I don't think I know so many people that do the back and forth as
That's
often.
fair.
So maybe I just lack of seeing it to see that it's possible. But you're right. If I keep up which I hope to do, if I keep up my chops, then what's to stop me from doing that? So maybe that's something I should also look around for, examples of people who've done both and have kept themselves agile enough to do both as well.
The only downside of that, and this is just me speaking to lots of customers and lots of scenarios, the only downside is sometimes you end up with that manager who is one of the smartest people, and they have a hard time delegating because they know they can do it all.
Yeah.
And I've ran into that too.
I have seen my current boss today on our one-on-one was like, yeah, I have to let this IC stuff go and step into manager, and I've been struggling with that. I'm like, I'm glad you know. I'm glad you're self-aware enough to know. We've been begging for you to delegate. And you're like, I'll just do it. And I get it, because it's explaining or taking that patience to bring someone up can feel like a lot depending on the urgency of the task. But I feel like that investment pays off when you take that time, then you don't have to worry about it again. And then you've shared the knowledge for somebody else to do it and take the torch instead of you being the single point of failure, burning yourself out, and then you go out and everybody's lost without you, which is not a good.
And then we all need to go and find our InfoSec therapist, Steph, who can speak Stephanese to us and bring us back.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect.
I have thought about doing consulting too, like in my later life, for different organizations on how to better work as a team, because I feel like that is a constant thing, whether I was in support or in security, is getting a team to team. Like I feel like sometimes you have that where they're all cool and friends, so that ends up happening organically, but a lot of times you have to bring very different people who are typically introverts together to work as a team, and it can be a struggle. So, yeah.
InfoSec therapist, Steph, who also does team building exercises, speaking Stephanese to you.
I'm adding a lot of stuff.
No, it's good.
I am from the slash generation, okay?
I'm trying to see how long your job title is going to be on your LinkedIn, is just if it's going to fit.
They do say millennials are the slash generation, where everything is slash and a slash and a slash. I'm a this slash this slash this, so.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure to chat with you.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out to SAINTCON.
Yeah,
hope to
of
see you in the
course.
future,
Thanks for
and hope
inviting
we're all
me.
working for you in the future as a CISO.
From your lips to God's ears. That's all I say.
Thanks, InfoSecSteph.
Thank you.